Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
India, China, Ladakh, Galwan, that is what's dominating the news cycle even today and may continue to do so for the next couple of days. So we stay with that theme in Cut the Clutter today, and as we had done yesterday, I am doing it with our defense editors Snehesh, Alex, Philip, and yesterday many of you complained that he didn't get enough time to speak and maybe I took too much air time, which is possible with me, usual suspect. So today we are making some ground rules between us. Ground rules are that he speaks for 10 minutes, during which I will ask him questions and he answers, and then he will talk to me for 10 minutes. So that way you get half and half time from each one. I know that you want all the time to go to Snehesh, but that I am not going to allow. So Snehesh, our ground rules are set. This is the line of actual control, and between you and I, we don't cross it.
Absolutely.
Right. So Snehesh, tell me, what is it that we know today that we did not know when we recorded our yesterday's episode, which is sort of around 9 o'clock, that was live. So what is it that we know now that we didn't know then?
One of the major new information that came out post the Cut the Clutter episode that we had yesterday was the fact that the toll has increased to 20 Indian soldiers. So before that, it was the army had confirmed the casualty of 3 soldiers, including the commanding officer of the 16 Bihar unit. It was only post 10 o'clock that the army issued another statement saying two important things. One, that the toll has increased to 20, and also that the de-escalation has taken place in Galwan Valley. Disengagement has taken place in the Galwan Valley. So these were the 2 important points that came out of the army statement. Fresh information has also been gathered through sources which indicate that the real issue was, as has been mentioned in the copy also yesterday, was the fact that there was a tent had become an issue between the 2 sides. It was in mid last week when the Chinese came forward to the PP-14, which is known as the Patrol Point 14, and set up 2 tents. As per the talks on Monday between the commanding officers, including the CO who has been killed in action, that he had with his Chinese counterpart, a decision was taken to disengage, wherein which both sides were to move back by about 2 kilometers. In the evening, a group of Indian soldiers led by the...
each side had to move 2 kilometers in their own territories. So a decision was taken, and in the evening, a group of Indian soldiers numbering about 40, led by the commanding officer, reached this particular location to see whether the Chinese have lived to their promise. It was found that 1 tent continued to remain. The commanding officer asked his men to dismantle the tent. That's when Indian commanding officer asked his men to dismantle the Chinese tent. It was a plastic tent, I believe.
Yes. So at that particular moment, a small group of Chinese soldiers came forward. They were outnumbered by the Indian forces initially. There was a argument that took place, and then some pushing and shoving took place. During this lasted for about 15-20 minutes. Immediately after this, a large group of Chinese came down. The Chinese were armed with sticks, they were armed with stones, and these sticks, had barbed wire and nails on them.
Yeah.
So this was the old, when in the medieval world, when the war used to be fought, these were the weapons that were used. So the Chinese clearly outnumbered the Indian soldiers at this particular moment. Now this commanding officer, since he was at the front, he was one of the first ones to get injured. His body was found the next day, Tuesday, from the water. So they were at a slope, and it was a narrow slope. So during the engagement, which happened over for about two hours or so, there were multiple troops that came in from the Indian side, from behind, as well as from the Chinese side. So since the
so more troops then came from the Indian side also.
Yes, more troops came from the Indian side and the Chinese also. So the number were much larger from the Chinese side though. During this point, it was a free for all. There was fist fight happening. The Chinese used various kinds of weapons. The Indians who came in from behind also they carried the sticks with them. So it was a free for all kind of a situation. In this particular situation, many of the soldiers, as I said, it was over a cliff, and below is the confluence of the Shyok and the Galwan river.
Yeah, in fact, it's a little, if you see satellite pictures, it's a little bit far from the confluence. Not that close, yes.
Okay, but it's the water which was flowing there. So many of the soldiers, during the pushing and shoving, fell down because they were pushed down. Some of the soldiers slipped and fell. When they fell into the water is not very deep. So the water had a lot of rocks and all. The soldiers fell on these rocks. They injured themselves. So it was happening late at night when there was no light. The rescue could take place only the next morning. Because of which, out of the 20, several of them died, of course, due to injuries. They fell down, but due to hypothermia, because they couldn't be rescued in time. The army has also said that there were injuries on the Chinese side. Now, there is no official word that has come out from China yet. There's a lot of speculation which is doing, as far as the numbers on the Chinese side are concerned. But the estimation is that there has been, what the army says is that, sources in the army says that there has been a large casualty on the Chinese side too. It's not just the Indian side.
Because what I keep also hearing in these army discussion groups and some other sources also, that apparently because the Chinese came in very large numbers, the ledge gave way under their weight. And many of them seems like they have fallen off it.
So just like the Indians have also fallen from the cliff, the Chinese have also fallen into the water below. The Indians didn't have any bodies, any Chinese bodies with them. Indians rescued their own, Chinese rescued their own. The estimation on the Chinese side is based on number of points. One is the fact that there are reports which have said that there are intercepts to it. But however, after I spoke to the Indian army sources, I am told that this estimation is based on the visual element of the people who were rescued, because the Indians could also see that the Chinese were brought in. There were multiple helicopters that were brought into the area by the Chinese to evacuate, the injured and those, including the fatal injured ones. So it is.
And there were stretchers.
There were stretchers. So it's an estimation based on what they have seen and based on possibly based on the intercepts. It is said that the Chinese did suffer casualties. It is something that even the Chinese state media have also accepted, that the Chinese did incur casualties, but they haven't given the numbers per se.
Well, that's a Chinese way. Chinese never reveal their casualties. In fact, their casualties of 1962 were only revealed in 1994.
Absolutely.
When they declassified some papers. And they were not inconsiderable. There were quite a few casualties. So it's not as if they just walked in 60. The Chinese don't reveal casualties. And as we know, even the Pakistanis usually don't, because Kargil casualties, they never accepted until much, much, much later. So, but in India, we don't hide our casualties.
Absolutely.
So are you convinced that this death toll of 20 is it? India is not hiding any casualties. India does not hide casualties.
As you rightly mentioned, India does not hide casualties. Unlike China, India is a very open country. There are bodies that would be brought home. So there is not even a minute chance of India wanting to hide its casualties. What we've been told is that 20 is the casualty as of now. I checked about a half.
Fatality.
Fatal casualties. Fatality is 20. 4 are critically injured. There are 35 who are seriously injured, but they are stable. There are some more casualties, but some more injuries. More people who have such injuries, but these injuries are minor in nature. So as of now, the fatalities on the Indian side is 20. The Prime Minister, the Defence Minister, the Army, and the videos of the last farewell has also come out.
So the story that you have done today for the print.in, which we just published, and you check it out, we'll give you a link. In that story, you've said that the Army is now considering changing its SOPs, standard operating procedures, on the line of actual control. Just tell us a bit about that.
Well, there is a thinking within the defense and the security establishment that given in wake of the kind of violence, and one officer termed it as barbaric violence by the Chinese, in which they overwhelmed the Indian soldiers, used clubs with barbed wires and nails on them. It has been felt that we need to relook at the standard operating procedures and the rules of engagement. As of now, when the Indian patrol team goes out, and it's applicable to the Chinese also, they don't carry firearms with them. They follow a banner drill where they come out with banners asking the other side to move back, saying that they are not in their territory, they are in India's territory, and same, the Chinese also do the same. However, in the recent past, over the last few years, there have been stone pelting that has taken place. That was still accounted for. However, in this particular issue, if you remember, on the 5th also, there was a violent 5th May. There was a violent clash that took place in Pangong.
Yeah.
There also, the Chinese had used sticks with barbed wires and nails on them. There were several injuries on the Indian side at that time too, including senior officers from the unit that was posted there. So there's a thinking now that we need to revisit these guidelines.
So we might think of resuming to carry firearms.
Absolutely.
Because what happens in this case, as I can see, the tactics the Chinese use is that they see a smaller Indian unit, overwhelm it with much larger numbers carrying these non-firearm but lethal arms.
Yes.
Right? Lethal barbaric arms.
Yeah.
And it's impossible for every defensive unit to be there in large numbers.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you are attacking it, you can come in larger numbers.
So I was speaking to a senior officer in the army, and his argument was that if there are firearms involved, there are precautionary steps that are taken before you engage with the other side. So if, for example, if the CO and the troops on Monday evening were aware of the fact that the Chinese had weapons with them, then there would have been a different protocol that would have been followed.
Right.
They were taken in by surprise with the brutality of the Chinese. So yes, there's a thinking within the Indian defense and security establishment about the time to revisit and the standard operating procedures as well as the rules of engagement along the LOC, and this would entail entire LOC and not just in Eastern.
Because with firearms you can defend yourself against even a much larger attacking force.
True.
At least in the mountains.
Yeah. So this rule is draws its inspiration from the 1996 agreement between India and China, according to which it was decided that there would be no firearms that would be used for hunting or any kind of activities within 2 kilometers of the LAC. So this
not even any blasting.
Yes,
for
not
road
even
building,
any,
etc.
yeah. So this principle of not carrying firearms is inspired from that 1996 agreement, which has now been revisited.
Yeah. So carry on.
Yeah, you wanted to ask something.
No, you carry on.
Okay. Now that we come back to our agreement,
Right.
while the Indians and the Chinese have not agreed to the signed agreements, one of the big thing that comes out from this standoff is, and this is a question that also comes to my mind, what happens now? There have been 20 soldiers who have been killed in action on the Indian side. There are casualties on the Chinese side too. But what happens now between the two countries?
It's his turn now to ask me questions. The diplomats have taken over, but how far this goes depends entirely on what is it that the Chinese want. If the Chinese want this as a grand distraction from their own problems within the country. Remember, why did 1962 happen? 1962 happened because the Great Leap Forward, Mao's incredibly stupid program, had gone completely wrong, and it had devastated China. And there was a lot of unhappiness and opposition. He also had tensions with Russia. Russia was the Soviet Union. They were distracted at that point. So he wanted nationalism, a surge of nationalism in the country, to get over that. And he did that. The other thing that people forget is that when Nixon and Kissinger met him, they asked him that why did you attack India in 62? And he said Nehru needed to be taught a lesson. So if you see that, then you have to try and read Xi Jinping's mind. He is not without troubles of his own.
Yeah.
He has many troubles and many challenges. So is he doing it for that reason? In which case he needs to keep this nationalism going. But if he sees the downside of that, we will know in the next 48 hours or so. But I think the approach on both sides, as we see it now, is to disengage, and I think disengage in all areas as we go ahead, except I think the finger area will continue to be a problem.
Yes, the finger area continues to be a problem. Shikhar, you mentioned that the diplomats have taken over. Today, the External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, spoke to his Chinese counterpart. Now, there were three important, elements that came out from the press brief, from the press statement. One, Jaishankar said that the Chinese took premeditated and planned action. So Jaishankar is trying to say, Jaishankar is saying and accusing China of this attack was planned. The other thing he said is that this incident will have serious impact on bilateral relationship. However, at the same time, the MEA statement says that neither side would take any action to escalate matters. Isn't it contradictory to each other, the statements, at least the first two and the last one?
If you've been reading the history of India-China relations, this is almost like going back to 1959. That's when the Konkala incident took place. Not very different from this. Although, from whatever we are hearing now and whatever you are saying, it looks like the Chinese have suffered a lot more damage here than they had suffered in Konkala. That's also when one CRPF, I think it was, patrol was ambushed, partly captured, etc. In fact, 20th October was the day, and that is even now, it's enshrined as the National Police Memorial Day.
Yeah.
So this is a bit like that, because these things will be said by diplomats, but then you have to see who keeps this promise. And the only side that can break this promise at this point are the Chinese, because India has no percentage right now in getting into Chinese territory or escalating. But this I can be quite sure that now if there is escalation from the Chinese side, the retaliation will be much sharper, and I suspect it will be with firearms.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi today, has spoken out on this particular issue. This is on the first time that he's spoken on this issue. The video that has come out in which, he says that the sacrifice of the soldiers will not go in vain. So when he says this, do you, should one expect that the government is going to do something?
Well,
given the history that this government has, whenever such an incident has happened, when such large losses have happened.
Well, I think he also said कि वो मारते हुए मरे हैं. मारते मरे हैं, which means that he also is asserting that our soldiers also killed or inflicted quite a bit of damage on the other side. So you can see it like that. I think, is it going to be like a gang fight, that today you came into our territory, tomorrow we'll come into your territory and have a gang fight? Frankly, I'd be surprised, because that's not the way countries like India and China of that size take revenge on each other. But having said that, we never thought that countries like this, who have every weapon in the world, including nukes, will actually fight with these
clubs and
these 12th century weapons, or maybe even pre-metallic age weapons.
Absolutely. Now the Prime Minister has called for an all-party meeting. This is taking place on the 19th. Is it too late for him to have called for the all-party meeting? Should the all-party meeting have been called earlier? Because this issue has been boiling over a month now. So, do you think that this all-party meeting is late? You should have done it much earlier.
Look, it's never too late, right? If he had done it much earlier, would have seemed like India is exaggerating the threat, right? And that itself would have become a factor for ratcheting up the crisis. But leaders have to choose their time. I wish he had chosen an earlier time, frankly, if you ask me, maybe a week or 10 days back, or maybe even just after the fighting or the scuffles, as we call them, or brawls in the finger sector took place. But I think after June 6, after the agreement between the two generals, he could have called an all-party meeting. But the more important thing than all-party meeting, what will happen at all-party meeting? Everybody will express solidarity and they'll say, we are with the government, this is India's fight. That is the general pattern. That is exactly what will happen. But that is cosmetic. If you want India to be together in a time of crisis, because what's happening with the Chinese is not three Lashkar-e-Taiba people coming in and you catch them or kill them or one escapes, etc., etc., or the odd headhunting that goes on LOC. It's not like that. It is more serious. So you have to get the country united, and for that you have to, if India has to fight this unitedly, then India needs a ceasefire or a cessation of hostilities in its domestic politics. If at the same time you're trying to bring down the government in Rajasthan, at the same time you are at war with the Chief Minister of West Bengal, if at the same time you are doing other things with political motivations, that divides. So we have to see whether that follows also or not, because that's very important.
Yeah, that's a very important point made by you, that there needs to be a ceasefire in the domestic internally also,
yeah,
as far as the political.
Yeah, because if you're calling each other anti-national, then what's the point of solidarity?
Yeah, that's a good point. Shikhar, I have two questions that come to my mind. One is, of course, a political question, which I'll ask is, do you think that the laws of 20 lives, everything is connected to politics also, sadly, that is the reality of life. Do you think that, it's a political setback also what is happening with China?
Look, if it looks like the Chinese are having their way on the borders, if it looks like they are moving in, occupying your territory, consolidating their gains, then there's a downside to it. Otherwise, this is a very tough country and this is a very tough army. In fact, the very fact that when this happened in a very disadvantageous position, the commandant of the battalion himself was there.
Yeah.
Tells you it's a very tough army, because
Absolutely.
he was in front and he was among the first to be hit. So this is a very tough army. This has taken casualties. It can also inflict casualties.
Yes.
So I don't think that will be such an issue. The issue is more substantive. How does this end now? That is the important thing, because China also has problems. China is also in different ways fighting, not just in its neighborhood. It's now a global nuisance. It's also fighting with America over trade. It's fighting with Europe over trade and other things. European countries have questions about how it handled COVID.
Yeah.
And it's fighting now, of all countries, with Canada. That's an unusual story. If you ask me, I'll tell you, because normally you would have thought Canada is such a liberal country. Justin Trudeau, the only country that fights with him is India, because he loves some of our radicals. But now Canada and China have a tough problem between them.
So what is the problem between them?
So problem between them, it's a classical story of crony capitalism and crony communism, right? And fake nationalism. Because Canadian authorities on 1st of December arrested on arrival in Vancouver, at Vancouver airport, a woman called, 48-year-old woman called Meng Wanzhou. Meng Wanzhou is not a nobody. She is not just the deputy chairperson, they say deputy chairwoman, and CFO, chief financial officers of Huawei, the big telecom behemoth.
5G.
Yeah, she's also the owner's daughter.
Achha.
And the owner has old connection with PLA and Communist Party of China, CCP. So he is a member of both China's capitalist and communist elites, right? That's his daughter. She was arrested by the Chinese based on a warrant issued, by the Canadians based on a warrant issued by the Americans. Americans issued a warrant against her for violating American laws on sanctions against Iran. So Americans wanted her extradited. So those extradition proceedings and started in January. Then what happened was that other cases came up in Canada and the US. Now, among other cases, she also has cases for trade secrets theft, for example.
Okay.
She also has cases for violation of financial laws. So these are then serious,
very serious
issues. In fact, this theft of state secrets, if she is convicted, carries a 10-year sentence. The Americans, Donald Trump wants her in extradition. Canada has to decide, because America is an ally also, and Canada can't say no. But the Chinese are putting pressure on Canada. So, and that pressure is coming through trade. So earlier, first of all, the Chinese stopped soybean and canola. Canola is cooking oil from Canada. Canada has a global monopoly in canola. Then they went after Canadian pork and beef. Then now they are going after, the story today is that they are going after Canadian logs, that is timber logs.
Okay.
Because Canada has a lot of forest, they cut it, they regrow it. It's a big income for them. So Chinese are now saying that we have examined and we'll examine further logs coming from Canada because they are carrying insects. So Canada ultimately is a small country, right? For them, and their trade agreement with China is being negotiated. For them, this trade agreement is very important, also for Trudeau. But once again, you can see, because the Chinese really want this woman back, this 48-year-old, because she is a very important woman for them. So they are using all these arm twisting methods with China, with Canada as well. So this China is different. You have to learn to deal with this China.
The new China under President Xi Jinping is different, is what you're saying?
Yeah, with America weaker, China seems to be out of COVID much faster than the rest. It's become very big. Now, the question people ask is, for example, this is not 1962. Even if the Chinese attack, surely this is not 1962.
Yeah.
This is not the Indian army of 1962. But the fact is that this Chinese army is not the Chinese army of 1962.
Also.
This is a very different kind of defense machinery. In fact, if you look at data from CIPRI, and we'll show you a chart, if you look at the data from CIPRI, see how much bigger China's defense budget has grown. You find on that graph, you find Pakistan somewhere here in Asia, then you find India somewhere here, and this is China like this. And 89 onwards, China has just ballooned as China's GDP is ballooned. So there is still a great deal of asymmetry. But also then in these issues, you can't say that absolute power matters. It is the relative power. So it's not as if China can put everything it has against India. It's got problems elsewhere. And the defender has his own advantages. So this is that complication that we are dealing with.
Perfect. So one last question which comes to my mind, since you mentioned the trade talks, the trade issue between between China and Canada. Just before coming for this, I was watching, somebody sent me a video which shows an Indian, society, a man throwing off a large, supposedly a Chinese TV, down, and people, stomping on it, hitting it with sticks. There's a whole campaign which is on about boycotting Chinese products. What do you make of this?
I mean, this is nonsensical. This is like you built a house, you had a fight with the architect, so you burn your own house. You paid the money and bought that Chinese TV, right? Maybe in future you will not buy one. So these are nonsensical, and these are, I think, dramas for TV channels. And this happens, India loses a match, somebody breaks a TV, Pakistan loses a match. I think this is all set up. People have these TVs, nobody buys a scrap TV anymore. I also have one odd. I think my cat broke one. I'm quite happy to throw it to make a point, right? Particularly if it makes me famous. So this is a joke. But if India really wants to respond to it, then the response to it has to come from improving India's manufacturing. So the important thing is, it is correct that China has a huge trade imbalance in its favor with India.
Yeah.
It's almost $60 billion. It's not even a joke. It's cruel. And it's cruel also that India has let it be, partly because India's manufacturing has not kept pace. Second, because of some idiotic policies in India. For example, we started drug price control. So all the raw material industry, API industry as it's called, for pharmaceuticals, on which India ruled the world, shifted to China. So we punctured our own boat. Now it's sinking. So we have to address those issues to see what is it that we can do to policy in our country so we can start making these things. So these jobs are not transferred to China, jobs and revenues. On the other hand, to spite the Chinese, if you start blocking them by raising tariffs, then basically you are punishing your own consumer. A TV that the consumer may have been able to buy for 20,000, today she will buy for 30,000 because you put tariffs on it, and all other prices then match up accordingly. So I think these things have to be done scientifically.
And with that, now that we are at the end of this particular episode of Cut the Clutter, I'll give you the last word on what do you think is the way forward when it comes to India and China bilateral relationship.
Look, I was 5 when the war in 1962 took place. I lived through that scar. It took about 40 years for my generation to not fully but relatively give up our dislike and distrust of the Chinese. I think with this one, Xi Jinping has written off another 5 decades of India-China goodwill. It's not going to come back. I can't guarantee future generations, but I don't see any future generations of India regaining their trust in China until the system in China changes. So as long as China is run by this kind of CCP, the China-India relationship is gone. Indians will never trust the Chinese.
Indians will never trust the Chinese. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this Cut the Clutter session with Shekhar Gupta, and with this we come to the closing of this episode. Thank you for logging in and watching this episode. Do subscribe to the Prince YouTube channel for more such videos.